everyone. Welcome to episode 69 of the Citrix session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got with me Bill Sutton, as always. Bill, how's it going?
Going well. Thank you, Andy. How about you?
It's Monday, and I'm actually going on vacation after this. So it's kind of Friday, kind of, sort of. And maybe you guys will see me disappear for a couple of days, but don't count on it.
Don't count on it. Yeah. Well, I'm spending some time in beautiful downtown Charleston, South Carolina this week. So working 3 days, but, hanging out down here in the evenings.
I thought there was something different about your setup there. You got the sailboat on the wall.
Yeah.
You got a nice, beautiful sunlight coming through the backside, which is fine. You look like a like a hologram or something. But you look good. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But yeah, something's different. So you're working from the mother-in-law's location, huh?
That's right. Yep.
Well, that's good. And hey, at least you and Trevor both have windows. In my new office, I don't have any windows. I have no idea if it's raining, storming, what have you.
Oh no.
I've been demoted. But it's a good room for podcasting. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
Well, we got with us Trevor Mansell. Trevor is the director, the head honcho of our managed services and hosting and support business down in Atlanta. Trevor, how's it going?
It's going great. How about you? Yeah, we're it's a nice day here if you're outside.
Yeah, if you're not stuck inside working.
That's right. And Bill, by the way, you can go and check on my son there in Charleston.
Just down the road, right?
Yeah, do some reconnaissance for me, please.
I don't think they'll let me in. So
yeah.
So Trevor, you've been on a couple of these with us. I guess I just want to highlight for the listeners that that you and the team, and that's the internal team as well as the extended XenTegra team, you guys are building probably the most Citrix focused managed service company on the planet.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I think that's fair to say. It sounds, I like the planet part for sure. But no, I think that's a true statement though. I don't think there's anybody else out there that is putting together a Citrix managed focused service. This is from SMB all the way up into, heavy hitting enterprise customers that we put this together for.
And for those listening, if you're looking just for a support contract, just somebody to call other than Citrix to help you through the Citrix world and all the pieces that bolt onto it, that's one of the main offerings. And then in addition to that, a managed Citrix environment. And in addition to that, potentially even a hosted and managed Citrix environment. That's probably the thing I'm most proud about that XenTegra as a company is doing, because there's a lot of companies that have claimed to do that over the years, but it never got to where they should have gotten. And Trevor and his team are putting a lot of effort into building a true Citrix machine that's there to support customers as well as manage them and even host them if that's necessary.
Yeah, I love the fact that we have this, Andy, for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is, we do a consulting project for a customer. We build a nice environment for them and it's functional, but then they need someone to call for support, or they need someone to monitor the environment and make sure it's up. So we can hand it over to Trevor's team. They can take it and run with it from there and manage the customer on a monthly basis. And keep their environment healthy and stable. It's a win-win all the way around for us and for the customer.
It is. Everybody needs a hand and a friend in the Citrix world.
That's right.
And that's always been part of what we intended to build when the company was started. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Trevor came over a couple of years ago and started putting that into practice. So guys, our goal is to cover part 3 of this, the different Citrix virtual app and desktop services. I'm sorry, Trevor, you had something else?
No, I was just going to say, I wish it was, it's gone fast. It feels like a couple of years, but yeah, it's been more like 5 years. So it's time flies when you're having fun here.
Well, and there's method to that madness. It takes a while to build out a team of top-notch Citrix guys and create the services that are necessary to Citrix. And I tell people this all the time, and a lot of people don't believe me that come from the infrastructure world, but Citrix is the most beautiful product you could possibly ever sell, because customers really need expert level help, even though it's just desktops on steroids or apps on steroids. And touches so many different parts of the business, all the way from the end user application workflow, all the way back to the storage and the servers and the network that are in the data center. It's a big undertaking to take on Citrix or virtual desktop or virtual app solutions. And that's one of the reasons why we started this business, is to get involved in helping people who just need a little help, or some people who need a lot of help.
Yeah, I mean, Citrix can be super easy and it can be super hard, and all at the same time. The reality is that, I think we all know it. Getting an end user experience just requires the full stack, and as much as we can do from a consulting project and getting it deployed in a great way. It's just the ongoing updates and processes and changes that take place, and how that happens is, can really, create problems, right? So, and that's what, essentially, it's the managed services piece, is the care and feeding, keeping that environment up and going, and performing well for the end users, past the project.
So we'll move on from this topic. We'll move on from this topic. I will ask one question. It's kind of a trick question for you guys. If I work with a company to roll out Citrix and I finish on the 15th of the month, and that's a Friday, what day am I going to need to be re-looking at my Citrix environment next? The following Monday, right? I mean, things change that fast in what we're doing.
Yep, they do.
Well, and that gets us to where we're at with this podcast series. The whole goal is to give people another way to consume what's happening in this space. And this is part 3 of our coverage of the Citrix virtual app and desktop services. And just to kind of give a quick recap, the options are Citrix virtual desktop service, where it's basically brokering the desktops in whatever cloud or whatever data center, or really whatever cloud cloud and data center that you want to broker those connections to. That's one option. There's the Citrix virtual app and desktop standard service, which includes both virtual desktops and apps. There's the Citrix virtual app advanced service. There's the Citrix virtual app premium service. There's the Citrix virtual app and desktop advanced service. And then finally, there's the Citrix virtual app and desktop premium service. And based on what you're seeing on the screen here and the document that we're going by for this series, there's features that are either enabled, or features that can't be enabled, depending on which edition, and I said the word edition on purpose, not version, but which edition of the product that you're choosing to use. So let's jump into here. The very first one is called Monitoring with Citrix Director, and that's kind of the evolution of the Citrix monitoring solution for virtual app and desktop that we've watched evolve from EdgeSite, which I joke every time I bring that up, because Bill and I and Trevor, I'm sure, have lots of history implementing EdgeSite and getting it to work. When Citrix, I guess maybe XenDesktop 4.0 came out, they started to add this director monitoring service, which has allowed people to get a lot of control and visibility into their Citrix environment. That's included with all the different services. Bill, anything specifically around monitoring just with the basic Citrix director that you would call out to the listeners?
Well, the obvious there, the ability for the help desk to leverage it to troubleshoot users. User calls in and says, performance is a problem, or I'm not getting my printers. They can pull it up on a user by user basis and look at what's happening in the user session, what policies have been applied to determine if they've received the printing policy and things of that nature. So it's used by admins for more of the deeper technical elements, but it's also used by a lot of customers for their help desk for some basic troubleshooting. So it kind of serves both worlds. But there are more advanced methods that you can get into once you step up in addition, and for the admins or the engineers.
But Bill, you brought up a good point. I mean, it used to be that to give the help desk access, you had to open up the full admin portal or tool and then lock it down. Monitoring through a director and giving them some level of access and actionability just through Citrix Director through that specific app is much more benign than giving them the entire management portal and expecting them to stay out of things they weren't supposed to be able to do, or lock them down.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Trevor, do you guys, in your hosting practice and managed service practice, do you guys find you're using Director a lot?
We typically, for our managed services customers, most of them are using our monitoring as a service, and we do use Director just to some degree, and we leverage it for to enable usually our level 1 help desk. That group of people that to enable them to take action on reboot a host or reset a session, that type of thing. But we leverage Logic Monitor and Uber Agent, and that's, again, we're trying to get the 360 view, which includes infrastructure, networking, and also dig deeper into the VDA metrics and analytics. So yes, we use it, but we've got some other tools that we like to leverage as well.
And I probably did a bad job kicking this off. The whole point in this section of this podcast is to talk about security and monitoring. And what we're talking about here with Citrix Director is just the basic tool that Citrix includes, which, you might look at that as being incomplete. And Trevor talked about other tools that you have to add sometimes to make it better. But if you grew up in the Citrix world where you had nothing and all of a sudden EdgeSite showed up, and then now the Citrix Director, you're extremely happy and lucky and fortunate that you didn't have to live in a world where you didn't have a built-in monitoring tool as capable as what Citrix has today.
No, I'd agree with that. I think when the comments I made are really around the idea when you go, Citrix doesn't work in a vacuum, right? So there's a lot of pieces and parts out in the infrastructure, and most companies have different monitoring, solutions for those other pieces. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it does a lot of the admin, support for Citrix, can be done through Director for sure.
So the next topic here is Director Premium, and that comes in the Virtual Apps Premium service, as well as the Virtual Apps and Desktop Premium service. And this looks like this is the ability to take Director and have it cover more information, integrate it with the NetScaler ADM or the Citrix ADC ADM technologies, as well as other SNMP integration tools. Bill, is that what this is really covering, this Director Premium?
It can do more trending information, and to your point, create custom reports, SNMP integration, provide proactive alerting, I believe, as well as integration with the what is known as Citrix Application Delivery Management, or ADM, which integrates with the formerly Citrix NetScaler, now ADC.
Yeah. Trevor, do you guys find yourself leveraging this portion, this level of integration within the managed services and hosting environment you guys control?
For some customers, yeah, not an enormous amount. I think one of the cool things about, especially the ADM integration we've got, kind of helps you with determining where the latency is coming from. So you get a little bit more visibility on a networking side. So it's that for customers that do have the ADM in place, that's definitely a value add for sure.
Okay, and then the next topic is something that Bill and I have covered multiple times on this podcast, but you just can't cover enough, and that's Citrix Analytics, which is called out here in this document as sold separately. But the ones that can have Citrix Analytics are the Virtual Desktop Service, the Virtual App Advanced, the Virtual App Premium, the Virtual Apps and Desktops Advanced Service, as well as the Premium Virtual App and Desktop Service. For those who maybe haven't heard some of our other podcasts, this is the ability to integrate into Citrix Analytics the Citrix Virtual App and Desktop product, so that we have yet another degree of real-time insight as to what's happening in our environment. I know firsthand we've had some experiences where customers, or even XenTegra ourselves, has been able to leverage the analytics to see anomalies happening in the environment and either thwart some threats or be able to react to performance challenges. Bill, how do you see this tying into the Virtual App and Desktop story?
Yeah, I mean, this is key and certainly a great enabler of securing and better analyzing performance. So, it's a great thing for us, particularly for any customer to have, particularly when you talk about security, the ability for it to manage access to a session based on where the user is logging in. They logged in all week from Virginia, and then all of a sudden on Sunday afternoon they're logging in from Uzbekistan or somewhere, or Russia or somewhere.
South Carolina.
Yeah. South Carolina, right. So it flags them, or it can even restrict them. So there's a lot more proactive elements here that can help administrators and security folks.
And I'm sure we've said this on many calls, but the number one valuable thing in the world is data, and being able to understand data and be able to see trends in data, and being able to have artificial intelligence tell us what's happening or what to do with what's happening without us having to be smart enough to proactively tell it. That's the future of a lot of this, is how can we handle what's going on better and smarter. Trevor, do you guys have customers that have the Citrix Analytics tool, and you guys as a managing practice able to leverage it?
Yeah, we do have definitely customers that have it. We use it internally as well. It's getting better and better. And, I think it's just like, I think a lot of people, leverage and see the value of what Microsoft does with their analytics and from a security standpoint and, just performance and performance trends and things like that. But yeah, it's absolutely, something that, is going to tie in, as far as the workspace goes, is that piece that, can really add a lot of value from a security perspective as well.
And between the two of you guys, can you just off the top of your head name the Citrix products that can roll up to analytics? I know there's virtual app and desktop service, which we're talking about here. What are a couple other ones that can roll up into analytics and provide that holistic view?
Endpoint management, content collaboration, formerly known as ShareFile. Those are two just right off the top of my head.
Any other ones, Trevor, you can think of?
I think the ADM, I believe the ADM service does as well. I was trying to.
Yeah.
You've got content, endpoint, ADM, and then the CVAD service. I think that, I don't know if there's any others.
So I'll go out and pull up a link to you here in a second to see which other ones it can integrate with. But there's a bunch. It's more than I realized, right? It's not just about your ICA sessions and going through what we're getting ready to talk here, which is the gateway service versus the gateway on-premises solutions, but both can roll up. So let's talk about this next piece. This is kind of the granddaddy of Citrix as a remote access solution, which has had lots of iterations, everything from, I can't believe I want to draw a blank on this. What was the web interface SSL offering that just took web interface and added as CSG, right? Citrix
Secure Gateway, yeah.
Secure Gateway, which I bet if enough people are listening to this podcast, we've got somebody out there that's still on that or just got off of it. We've had customers that have recently gotten off of that. And then you have the CAG, the Citrix Access Gateway service, the Citrix Access Gateway Advanced service, the Citrix Access Gateway Enterprise service. A lot of those things are now replaced by this one concept, which is any of these services that we're talking about here on this podcast they get an entitlement to come through the Citrix hosted service for each customer. And that just simplifies the need for having your own gateway as a service that you create. Bill, obviously you've got lots of customers that are either using this or starting to look towards the future when they can use this and not have to have their own service, right?
Yes, absolutely. Admittedly, one thing that's in here I wasn't aware of was the 1 gig of data per user per month. It's a lot more than I thought it would be, but we're seeing a lot of customers that are migrating away from on-prem ADC to the gateway service for access to their virtual apps and desktops by far.
Yeah. And it calls out here that you can upgrade this to a more advanced gateway as a service, but as an entitlement for any of these virtual app and desktop services, you get the minimal gateway as a service, which for a lot of customers is all they ever need.
Yes.
And it takes the burden of maintaining this thing off of them. And now it's Citrix's job to keep it up to date and working. So Trevor, I know as a company, right, XenTegra Connect, which is our managed service business, it provides IT functions to XenTegra, the company. We went away probably 2 months ago from having our own NetScaler ADCs providing gateways for us to using the Citrix as a service one for a couple of reasons. What were those reasons from your perspective?
Just, we're all about simplification, right? So everybody over engineers, and, I think we're always coming in and trying to, take a second look at it and see if it really if it makes sense. I think in our case, gateway as a service, well, there's a few reasons for us, right? We want to use what we sell, right? That's part of it, but also, and then just really understand is it apples to apples as it relates to the NetScaler or now ADC gateway. And so, but yeah, I think it's truly, you don't have to maintain a full ADC appliance, virtual or physical, anymore if you're just needing gateway services. And it's kind of, there's a lot of people that transition from CSG, like you mentioned, to ADC, and that was such that's a lot of stuff for just running a pretty simple ICA proxy, and so this kind of gets back. I think we're going back to the simplicity, of the CSG piece. So it's cool, and we've, I think there's a few things that we're missing that we're now seeing. So EDT and the UDP, support in there. So we're seeing a lot of people, jump on board now.
I think Citrix is to a point where the evolution of this workspace and gateway as a service has got most of the basic things in it that a lot of companies can just skip the standing up of Citrix ADCs for gateway functionality in their own data center, but not all. I'd say it's probably 50% at this point, and that's worth having a good conversation around what matters to you. But we have customers that just invested in buying new NetScaler ADCs or Citrix ADCs for the sake of building that out in their data center, but they know 2 to 3 years from now they won't have to make that investment again. They'll be able to use this entitlement as a service, or maybe even a more advanced service as Citrix continues to evolve what they can do in the cloud with ADC functionality.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, next topic on here is federated authentication service. Guys, help me understand what this is. Is this the ability to tie into other federated authentication services, or Citrix adding that as part of what their offering has? So
this is an interesting one. We see this frequently where we have multiple different identity providers. That's probably not the right term, but essentially this is you want to log in with your Azure AD credentials, but you've got a on-premises Active Directory that either isn't synced or you're trying to use a third-party solution like Okta, something along those lines. Essentially, you authenticate, and in order for it to pass the credentials to the storefront server, it has to issue you a smart card, and FAS essentially issues a virtual smart card and logs you in with a certificate. So it's really where you've got a third-party identity provider leveraging SAML typically, and you want that user to log into a Microsoft Active Directory environment. It can't do that natively, so it needs something in the middle, which is what FAS essentially does. Right, Trevor?
Yes, and that's right. We use it internally, and so I think so there's a lot of people out there wanting to use Azure, Azure AD as one of those SAML credentials, and so we see that a lot, and it also allows for that to go all the way through to the actual VDA, which is joined to your most of the time it is joined to your normal AD. It might be synced, but it's still joined to that AD. So this basically it's the easy button, right? It's you don't have to stand up all the gear like you used to, and you just flip a switch. It's a beautiful thing. It definitely simplified a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, as you guys know, we recently onboarded some new people, and the more of these things we can make single sign-on with our Azure environment or Azure AD, whether it's the Azure as a service or syncing up our AD up to Azure, it just makes life so easy to give them one username and password instead of them writing them down in a notebook somewhere, which none of us really want to happen. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then that brings us to the next topic, which is multi-factor authentication. This one, as well as the last one, all have that box checked. So, Citrix as a company knows that if they're going to provide something that's this accessible as a service, that multi-factor is a nice thing to have, and probably a requirement for most organizations to have at this point. If your organization is not using multi-factor to get into your Citrix environment, then that's bad, and we need to try to figure out how to help you with that. I'll go back to I think it was South Carolina, or one of the states where Citrix was used to get in, and it wasn't anything to do with Citrix being a problem. It was the fact that the air conditioning guy had access through Citrix into the environment, and it was a service account, just a general account, and multi-factor would have caused that to not have been an issue. Guys, any thoughts on multi-factor? I probably don't need to go into a whole lot of detail. Hopefully most people are using some form of multi-factor at this point to get in their Citrix environment.
Yeah, I mean, this is the old something you have, something you know scenario, and we have seen a really significant increase in this in the past 6 months in requests to MFA enable their access to Citrix, MFA enable their access to Office 365, things of that nature. So there's a lot of awareness of the inherent security in this solution, and so we've seen a lot of interest in it over the past few months.
So, Bill, I think I love that you brought it in those terms, but I think it's something like your password, and something you're real time given, right? That's the most secure thing.
Something and something you have was the old way where you had the key fob, that sort of thing. But you're right.
Yeah, even safer and good, as long as you're not on an airplane, and then hopefully you've got a tool that allows it to fall back to some type of generated code that both environments know about simultaneously.
Exactly. The one time.
Trevor, we just moved from Duo at XenTegra, which we like a lot, to Microsoft Azure AD multi-factor. Was that just because our needs were simple enough that we didn't have to have the advanced functionality of Duo across the spectrum of things we do?
Yeah, that was part of it, and again, just, part of our goal too in simplification is reducing the number of vendors, in the mix, and honestly, it met a lot of, most everything that we needed. And, one thing to note here is that, I think a lot of people already have multi-factor solutions out there. But for people that don't, if you've already got the licensing for Citrix, and everybody is going through Citrix to get to their workspace, this is a solution you can potentially save yourself some money, in licensing. So just something to be aware of.
Right. All right. So the next one's kind of fun. We've actually been implementing this for production use cases and demo use cases as XenTegra, and that's session watermarking. I guess one thing to point out really early, Trevor, is that's highly reliant on the workspace app, to the best of my knowledge, right? You can't necessarily do that with a browser-based session, but if you can force or enable your users to use the workspace app, then through the as a service offering, you can turn on watermarking so that the app that's being launched through Citrix being viewed at the endpoint will always have a watermark on top of it. Is that a fair way to describe all that?
Yeah, you said it. You need the local workspace app, and the proper version of it as well that has that enabled, and that gives you the ability for the advanced security. And one of them is watermarking, and then I'm sure you're going to get to some of the other ones.
Yeah, I found out the hard way that's mostly through the workspace app, and specifically, it's not even all workspace apps yet, but it's something Citrix is evolving to where, the various ones like the Google Workspace app and others will have it. I think for sure the Mac and the Windows ones have it today, right?
Yeah, and I haven't tested some of the Linux workspace apps, but yeah, Mac and Windows, they have it.
Yeah. So Linux is probably next. I don't think Linux has it yet, but I'll double check this afternoon in my IGEL environment and see if it does. Hey, Bill, have you had a chance to experience the session watermarking in our environment yet?
I have. Yes, I've launched a couple of apps that showed it on there.
Yeah. Well, and staying with that concept, let's jump down a little bit to the app protection policies, and that's where we can do additional things around this where we can enable keystroke logging and blanking out the screen. I found out the hard way the other day. I was doing a demo of this for a customer, and Trevor's turned on the security policies, and I went to launch my my workspace app, my Citrix workspace app, on my Windows laptop, and I was explaining how it works and showing them, and they said, "Hey, we can't see your screen." And what I realized at that moment is because of the protection policies that were in place and the enablement that what Trevor had done, that when my workspace app launched and I had it full screen or partial screen, they couldn't see it because it was automatically blanked out because the workspace app was doing what it was told to do. Tons of opportunity there to add a layer of security to the virtual app and desktop service that we've never had in the past. And let me be fair for everybody listening, we haven't talked about, file redirection and printer redirection or turning those things off and turning off keyboard mapping. Those are old school Citrix security plays that do work in this environment. They're just not sexy enough to talk about anymore. Those are step one in securing the environment, but adding something like app protection policies that understand keystroke loggers and screen blanking, that's super powerful these days. Bill, have you had a chance to experience any of those yet?
Very little, but where we have, it's been mostly financial services and healthcare. That's where we see the most interest in these, obviously. But anybody can be interested in this, particularly the key logging. That's really more common, or we're seeing that a lot more in the security space. But I haven't really experienced this myself, other than setting it up in a lab environment. But I know we've had a few customers that have implemented this.
This goes back to the conversation we've had forever, which is the idea that, okay, do everything you can, but you can't prevent a keylogger and you can't prevent somebody from taking a picture of the screen. Well, even those things are now capable of being addressed. Trevor, you're the guy setting all this stuff up on the back end for customers as well as for our own internal use cases. What have you seen about app protection policies that have intrigued you?
Well, I think that the biggest thing here is the fact that it doesn't have to be a published. We're not just talking about a published app or a published desktop that's sitting in your data center, right? Right. We've always, like you mentioned, we've always been able to have all the policies disable, printing or cut and paste and all that. But the huge thing is that, hey, now I can publish out SaaS-based apps and apply security policies, because there's a huge use case out there, right? It's a massive use case of non-VDI, non-published app users in workspaces. But how do you protect that, right? It's the downside of it is more difficult to manage, it's more difficult to secure. This comes in and gives you, the single sign-on and then additional security like this for those use cases. I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, guys, the last one, which has been around, I guess, for a decade now, and it still seems like one of the most magical things to me, and that's session recording. And that's the ability to take that virtual app or virtual desktop session that's coming across over the HDX protocol, ICA, and fork it over into a different environment where it's captured there as well. Kind of like a DVR type of concept, which for maybe some of our younger listeners, they don't even have to think about DVRs anymore. But the idea that we can record those Citrix sessions, and because of things like analytics, we can even turn those on real time and not have it running all the time. Just, when certain things happen, all of a sudden flip the switch and start recording the user session for either performance reasons or for security reasons. Bill, have you had a chance to implement? I'm sure you've implemented it. What's your favorite session recording story from your consulting days?
Oh gosh, that's probably a bank where they had a user. I don't know exactly. They wouldn't tell me exactly what they were doing, but they ended up having to walk somebody out the door because they were disclosing information or obtaining access to information they shouldn't have been. This was several years ago, and they suspected it, and so we put session recording in. They ran it for a month or so, and were able to build a case against this person, and ended up having to walk them out the door.
Yeah. So, Bill, one of the obvious questions that come up every time with session recording is how much data does it create, and can you kind of address how what it captures and how much that piles up?
Yeah, it captures, when you think about what is a Citrix session, it's screenshots, mouse movements, and keystrokes fundamentally. But it doesn't capture it. It basically captures deltas. So just kind of like how the data is sent. So in other words, it grabs the screen, and then as the user moves around, it captures the movement. It doesn't recapture the screen multiple times. It more, captures the session. So yes, there is a data element, but it's not as significant as most customers think. And the ability to be able to set this for specific activities, particularly when you're leveraged the analytics tools, and being able to kick off the recording when certain things happen or certain apps launch or certain users launch certain apps, allows you to make it a lot more granular, and you can target it at a specific use case, on a scheduled basis, so that you're not running it 24/7.
Right.
Unless you.
Trevor, do you have any Citrix session recordings? All right, I'm gonna ask a dumb question. Maybe not a dumb question, but what was this called before? Smart Auditor. Sorry, I just answered my own question.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Hey, Trevor, you've been around Citrix a long time. Any Smart Auditor or session recording examples that you would give our audience?
Honestly, I don't have a ton of experience with session recording, but I've been involved in projects goes back pretty far, but you tend to see it in highly regulated call centers. That's who is that's the target customer for this, and a lot of times. But
I've also had customers.
They need to go back into history and see what happened for compliance.
Go ahead, Bill. You had something?
I've had some customers leverage it as a training tool as well. So they'll tell the new person on the calls in the call center, we're going to record your sessions, and then we're going to, if you have questions, you need to write down what time of day and that sort of thing, and they could walk back through the recording and correct any issues that might have been identified or help troubleshoot elements that didn't perform the way they were supposed to. So it's not really all about Big Brother here. It's about being able to help improve the efficiency and the productivity of your workers, as because you could go back and see what they were doing, and where errors were occurred, you could address them.
Yeah, Bill, I was going to say the same thing. It doesn't have to be about Big Brother and
Right.
security. It could be about enhancements and helping people be better at their job.
Right.
Well, guys, that gets us to the end of this. I'll just bring this back around to the idea that if you're a true Citrix guy, you've known from the early days of you touching this product that it had security elements into it that apply beyond the things we're talking about here today. If I have a situation where I've got a Citrix session that nothing leaves the data center other than the screen scrapes, that's one heck of a security story. And, Trevor and I are working with several security companies now that obviously, well, I jump on early on and start challenging them to see Citrix as a security play. And the ones that can't or won't, then we don't work with. The ones that can and start to embrace what Citrix does for security, those are the ones we double down and work with. XenTegra being a great example of a company that we've really worked with to try to educate them into Citrix being a security play, and then how do we, as companies, double down on the idea that we can really help customers extend and embrace and extend on what security elements Citrix brings to the mix. So, Trevor, before we let you go, anything specific around this topic that we didn't cover that you would want to make sure we expanded on?
I didn't see secure browser in here. Where was that?
I did not see it either. Let's talk about secure browsing and secure browser and secure browser service. Secure browser is the idea that we can take the workspace and run a workspace app and have a Chromium version of a browser that launches based on policy for the end user, so that they don't have to use their local browser, and it kind of creates this sandbox type concept. In addition to that, we have the secure browser service, where it actually does the same thing, but it launches a published Chromium session from a Linux operating system back in an Azure data center on Citrix's tenant. Trevor, thoughts on both of those that you'd want people to be aware of?
Yeah, I am sure there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that there's a Chromium browser, secure Chromium browser built into the Workspace app. I think there's probably a lot of Citrix people out there that don't know that. Because I didn't know it until, I guess the last year. But so another part of that is the service. Again, you don't have to pay. You're not paying to host a server for this secure browser service. So that's another thing. If you've got use cases out there, or it's just these local non-hosted use cases, you can pick and choose which ones to leverage that secure service for, and maybe your endpoint that doesn't support the maybe some of the security features that we're talking about. Well, you just put it in the secure browser service, and boom, you've got coverage, and from a security perspective, and you've got in device support. So yeah, I don't know. I think these are some things that a lot of people aren't aware of, or that there's a ton of value, especially from a security perspective.
Yeah, and if people want more information on that, we can certainly help find it on the web, and as well as demonstrate and explain it in more detail. But yeah, I'm surprised this document we're using for the features of the virtual app and desktop service do not include secure browser and secure browser service dialogues. I'm not sure if that's an oversight or not. So, Bill, any additional topics or features that are part of the virtual app and desktop service that you would want people to know about that we didn't cover here?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, secure browser, obviously one example, but you mentioned something earlier about security and how a lot of folks have never seen Citrix as a security play, but I can count at least 2 instances in my past where a customer got a ransomware attack. And after the ransomware attack hit, the only thing still running was a Citrix environment.
Right.
So that's got to speak, to the security of the solution based on how it's architected at a minimum.
And if it was infected, if you're using some type of image management service, you just reboot it, and whatever was in that image during runtime is now gone. It's a really powerful story.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got an example where the FBI came in and said you need to use more Citrix. That's the part of your environment that's still alive. And we had that happen within a week or so ago, didn't we, Trevor?
Yeah, refresh my memory.
Where we had the healthcare practice that got malware.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. No, that was.
How did you forget that one already?
Yeah, I know. I thought you said another name, but yeah, no, it's yeah. Citrix is definitely especially for the customers that already own it. There's an enormous amount of value. It's not security everything. That's why you bring in like a managed SOC, or your other pieces of the environment. There's for a strategy, but Citrix makes that makes coverage, secure coverage a lot easier, and we've seen that over the years.
For sure. Yeah, sometimes I use the basic demo of, being in a meeting with a customer. They've got their laptop. I ask them if their laptop's secure. They say yes. And then when they're not looking, I carry their laptop out and set it in the hall. I'm like, well, it's not that secure, is it? Citrix solves that problem. Step 1.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining, and we'll do this again in a couple weeks. I appreciate your time as always, and enjoy having these conversations. Hopefully listeners are getting a lot out of this, and the future of this podcast, we're probably going to open it up and have people even attend as we record it. So more to come. Stay tuned.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Andy.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.